I'm really pleased and to get this opportunity to say something. And the paper, the title of my paper is The Concept of a Teacher of the Later Vedic Period and the Importance of the Philosophical Counselor. Yes, with a special reference to J. Krishnamurti. Now, I would like to share something which I felt while writing the paper. See, what I felt was the teacher of the later Vedic period, he was actually performing several philosophical counseling functions. The functions that he was performing were nothing but philosophical counseling in the truest sense of the term. Now, if we have this claim, then this claim is perfectly true. Why? Because, and it is not an undue claim. Why? Because we find him making the pupil responsible as well as taking the responsibility himself to a great extent. I mean, education, if it be imparted in a very effective way, one needs to be the teacher, the educator, or the facilitator. He needs to perform this act of philosophical counseling, which is very much evident in the later Vedic period. The institutions, if we go through, of the learning as well as the system in particular, then we get glimpses, several glimpses perhaps, of philosophical counseling. And if we come to a very modern Indian contemporary philosopher like J. Krishnamurti, we will also find, on the basis of his philosophization on the self, on, say, as he is denying cultivated intelligence, on what is actually required for the educator, and even he is claiming for the education of the educator, and on the self, then we will find that he is also talking of philosophical counseling. So we are unduly getting into, I mean, doubts and disagreements on the issue. Because when we are trying to impart values, acting as an educator, as a facilitator, the act that we perform is actually nothing but philosophical counseling, which is actually helping and will help our pupils, our students. So if we come to the later Vedic period, then just to start with, we can have, say, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. But yes, those were like this thing that on some are like on priesthoods and on sacrifice, and Upanishadic teachings may be given at the end of the studentship. All this we know, but the thing is, these were teachings of the sages, and they were voluminous, they were huge, voluminous, and we know that there was the need of being commented. So there were like the institutions of learning, see the names that it originated, the shakhas, the charanas, the parishads, we have also the kulas and the gotras. Now, what is the guru doing? What is the educator doing? he is trying to put it in the disciple, the realization that, see, I am handing down the whole set of heritage and culture, and you are going to protect it via what? Not any writing skill. It is via oral transmission. So it is like institutionalization of education itself. Now, it is like making the individual the trustee and the set of information, which is actually the values and the culture that is being handed in the form of, maybe in the form of teachings, well, fine, but still you need to protect it. You need to be an institution yourself, because you again will be transferring it to others. So see, you can, the knowledge that you get, the information that you get, that can grow like a tree. And see, like the branch of a tree, and we have the word shakhas. And yes, there can be some difference on, like in terms of pronunciation or on commentators field. So you can have the pratishakhas, you can have the charanas, like a very few scholarly people, and forming an institution, a group, or you may have like the parishads, assemblies of different members from different charanas. And then we can also have the family lineage, the kulas and the gotras. But here, this, the whole thing that is being told is the specific, maybe the original hymn is the same, but see, you maintain the sanctity. And what these are all sort of a counseling that is done, and the thing is protected over the years. Now, if these are the institutions, there are also the systems. Now, what are those systems? First of all, the guru is very important, because why? Svādhyāya, the self study is important. It is undoubtedly true, but then you need a facilitator as well. And see, what is the facilitator doing? Now, he is like taking the responsibility to this extent that a pupil is undergoing this whole process of Upanayana. Now, it is nothing like some religious acts being performed for 3 days, and even people cut short to 1 day nowadays. But see, it is important. Why? Because the disciple is supposedly to be there in the embryo for 3 days, and then being matured after these 3 days. Now, by this process, the guru becomes the spiritual parent, despite of the biological parents that are there. So, this is the responsibility to this extent that the educator is taking, and he is actually making the pupil also responsible. Now, there are also external acts like asking for alms. When the disciple is there, he is being introduced to the system of education through, then the process begins. He is asking for alms, tending for the sacred fire. Everything has a spiritual significance. These are not the only physical acts that pupils are engaged with. So everything has a spiritual significance. Like if you want to kindle the fire within, you do something external, something physical. So the educator and the facilitator is all the time via different physical acts, they are trying to put in some values. That is the main aim. That is the main aim. But now, if we just come to our present very contemporary Indian philosophical thinker like J. Krishnamurti, we will find that these are all social practices which were not waved out. Krishnamurti, when he is trying to philosophize on the self, he has given a very nice definition which also includes the self in a community. And he is telling two things which might seem to be contradictory as far as the language is concerned, but it is not contradictory. It is absolutely understandable, and it is very important, in fact, to remember that the self is dividing, the self is all inclusive. It is all inclusive, it is also dividing. Now, people might argue on this, but still we have to remember that why did he do this? He is trying to say that if an educator is putting aims in front of the pupil, then will find him running all the time behind that aim blindly, without any actual aim. Why? Because he will find within himself always a state of tension, always a state of tearing apart, always a state of dilemma. So it is not important to set rules and to set aims, because when the mind, Krishnamurti puts it in these terms, when the mind ceases to create, there is actual creativity. Unless and until we stop somewhere, we have that have serenity inside, the peace inside, we cannot achieve anything in the real term. The real task of the educator is not to make achievers only for a short period of time, or say a distant goal is set that you need to do this, now go and you have to achieve that. No, if we put it in this way, then we are the educator himself perhaps needs education. Krishnamurti is claiming this. So he is also claiming that cultivated intelligence, cultivated intelligence may be there, and it is a very intense thought that see, if you do not, if the self is not using heart as the faculty, and only it is using the head as the faculty under the guidance of the educator, then the educator needs an education, because he is not performing philosophical counseling as well as the self. You will find the self as tearing apart. So the faculty which is to be used must be the heart. That is, we must love the subject, we must love the subject, so that we have a direct intuitive perception, which is possible, which is definitely possible under the guidance of a philosophical counselor. If he can tell the pupil in this way, obviously there will be the true knowledge gained by the pupil. This is the perception of entirety is absolutely possible. So what is actually needed is, just like as we have already heard also, that a peaceful coexistence. Now, we can talk so much about philosophical counseling and whether at all it is possible or not, but the thing is, as teachers, as educators, and as facilitators, it is our responsibility to put that suitable environment of learning within. If the environment of learning is not without, outside, external to the pupil, it has never been, it will never be. And teachers from, if you take examples from history, Also, if you take examples from contemporary Indian thinkers, you will find that they are trying to build this concept, very concept, that the environment is within. You have to have a very a peace within, a sense of coexistence and tolerance within, unless and until you may not know the crux of the matter. Thank you.